Making dog food in front of relatives, huh?
Pegler burst into laughter, hurling insults. Dog food, really? I was at a loss for words, stunned by such harsh verbal abuse.
There's no other way to describe such unappetizing stuff. It's nothing but dog food. Now hurry up and make it again.
I instantly retorted to Pegler's words. Huh? I'm still out shopping, though.
What?
Pegler seemed puzzled, but I didn't care. I was just executing my own revenge on Pegler. I'm Aldous, turning 50 this year. With my daughter moved out, it's just my husband Pegler and me at home. Pegler works at a major job advertising firm. It's a well-known company offered featured in commercials. Influenced by his environment, Pegler strongly believes in upward mobility.
Men with high incomes are superior.
That's Pegler's mantra. To earn more, he works late into the night. I've been secretly rooting for Pegler's hard work. We met through a friend's introduction. I work remotely and don't meet men often. My last boyfriend was in college. A concerned friend introduced me to Pegler through an acquaintance. My first impression of Pegler was of a fresh and handsome man. His suit was sharp, his hairstyle stylish. As someone not into fashion, he seemed from a different world. But Pegler was unpretentious.
I'm busy with work and can't meet often, but I'll treasure you, so let's shake on it.
Saying yes, I instantly fell for him and shook his hand. We started going out, though it was always short trips to eat or cafes. Sometimes Pegler's phone would ring, and he'd have to leave for work.
Work call. Sorry, I have to go to the office. I'll make it up to you later.
He'd say and leave. It was sad, but it was work. I understood and accepted it. Soon after, Pegler proposed. I said yes with a smile, thinking happy days were ahead. Little did I know, it was the start of a nightmare. 25 years are about to pass since then. Lately, Pegler's been coming home late. Since the beginning of our marriage, he's been working overtime and only comes home to sleep. We hardly talk. I once voiced my concerns in our early marriage. Can't you come home earlier sometimes? Let's eat together once in a while. Pegler snapped.
Since when did you get the right to lecture me? You think you're better than me?
He bit me with an irritated look on his face. I was shaken by the sight of Pegler I hadn't seen before the marriage. I didn't mean that. I'm sorry. I apologized immediately. With little experience in relationships, I was deeply rattled. But Pegler didn't forgive me.
You earn less and act all high and mighty with your petty job,
he said and locked himself in a room. We didn't speak for a week. I regretted it deeply, so I stopped asking Pegler to come home early. And since our early marriage days, I've been speaking to Pegler in formal language. He's old-fashioned believing.
A woman should walk 3 steps behind and follow in silence. Show me respect.
Of course he says that. I lost my parents early and didn't know what a formal family looked like. Back then, I loved Pegler too much to think of leaving over such issues. That's why I really don't want to break up over something like this. So I had no choice. Yes, I had no choice but to obey. Before marriage, Pegler was very kind. He always cared about me. He cared for me and never forced formality or looked down on me. I'm sure he'll return to his old self someday. With that hope, I've been getting through each day. But in 25 years, Pegler never reverted to his pre-marriage self. I've been struggling every day, drowned in despair. One day,
I'm home, tired. I'm going to take a bath.
Pegler yawned as he walked in. Welcome home. The bath's ready. I hurried to greet him. It was 2 a.m. He must have come back by taxi. I neatly arranged Pegler's shoes he had carelessly taken off. Then I noticed something odd. A whiff of perfume came from Pegler's shoes. He always wears cologne before work, but this scent was new to me. I wanted to confront him right away, but Pegler had already gone to the bath. Confronting him would probably just end in him lashing out. Just the perfume wasn't enough evidence. Reluctantly, I gave up on asking him about it. Weeks passed. The unfamiliar scent still lingered on Pegler's shoes. By then, my feelings for Pegler had cooled. A man who might be cheating? No thanks. Pegler probably thought I wouldn't bring up divorce. Even if I quietly divorced him, it might not affect him much. I didn't act openly. Then one day, Pegler suddenly spoke to me.
Next Sunday, we're having a family meal at my parents'. Help Mom out on the day, okay?
Yes. Every year, Pegler's family gathered for a meal. I'd go early to his parents' house to help his mother. Mother-in-law Roughton always cooked with great care. I mainly cleaned and tidied up. Since my father-in-law passed away the year before last, we skipped the meal last year. Thinking of this, Pegler seemed pleased.
Speak is coming back for it, too.
Speak, our daughter, was away for university. Pegler adored her. Yes, I replied indifferently. Then came the day of the family meal. I was busy with preparations at my in-laws from morning. I carefully cleaned the living room, the venue. Roughton, polishing the altar, said,
I hurt my back the other day. Sorry to have you do so much, Aldous.
Roughton, frail and kind, was so different from Pegler. While I was busy, Pegler arrived.
Are you helping Mom properly? She's got a bad back. You handle the relatives.
He laughed.
Pegler.
Roughton scolded, but he didn't care.
Ah, so noisy. Can't wait for Speak to come.
And went to his old room. He'd probably relax there until the event. At that moment, Roughton asked,
Can you buy some more liquor?
Yes, I'll go now. I hurried to the store. While buying liquor, my phone rang. It was Pegler. I felt weary, but couldn't ignore it. Hello? I answered reluctantly. It seemed Pegler was already in the living room, noisy with arriving relatives. Then Pegler said something unbelievable over the phone.
Making dog food in front of relatives, huh?
Pegler laughed heartily as he jeered. What? I was baffled by Pegler's remark.
I dumped all the dinner in the yard.
And he was loud about it. Because of Pegler's loud voice among the relatives.
Pegler, isn't that a bit disrespectful to your wife? The dishes looked so delicious, and throwing them in the yard is such a waste.
I heard someone defending me. Dog food? I was at a loss for words at such terrible insults. Pegler seemed to care little about my or anyone else's feelings.
That nasty stuff. What else could it be but dog food? Just go ahead and make something new.
He said, laughing wickedly. I quickly responded to Pegler's words. Huh? I'm still out shopping, you know. So it's impossible for me to serve dinner right now.
What?
Pegler sounded confused. I'm at the supermarket. It's a 40-minute drive, so how could I possibly make anything? I argued back, but Pegler wasn't convinced.
Then who made this meal? It's steaming hot and looks freshly made. Mom said she didn't cook it. That leaves you, doesn't it?
Pegler seemed puzzled, but I didn't care. Anyway, I'll be back soon. Let's talk then. With that, I ended the call. Whatever hell Pegler was about to face, it was none of my concern. He would surely regret it deeply, but that's fine. I was only executing my revenge on Pegler. I'm back now. I returned to my in-laws' house, carrying bags of booze from the supermarket.
Miss Aldous, I'm so sorry about this,
Roughton said to me. Probably having heard Pegler's rude comments earlier, she looked a bit uncomfortable. As I was dealing with Roughton, Pegler came storming into the entrance. Seeing me, he started yelling.
You cut it out. Making up nonsense about not cooking that awful meal? Your cooking isn't fit for humans anyway.
Pegler, how dare you speak to Aldous like that? Roughton scolded him, but it didn't seem to affect Pegler.
Mom, you really should teach Aldous how to be a proper wife. That's why she can never cook a decent meal.
Pegler stands back and makes such a bold statement. Pegler was smug, looking utterly convinced he was right. It's amazing how much he could belittle people. I sighed deeply at Pegler's nastiness.
What now?
Pegler seemed irritated by my sigh, glaring at me fiercely. There was no need to show mercy to someone who looked down on others and acted this way. I was thoroughly intent on setting up Pegler. So with a smile, I said, The person who cooked today's meal wasn't me, you know. Should I call the person who did?
Huh?
Pegler looked puzzled. You can come out now. I called to someone who was hiding. Then the person who had been waiting in another room came out. Pegler's face turned pale. He was trembling.
Speak?
Dad, sorry for making dog food. There stood Speak, whom Pegler adored.
No, that's a misunderstanding. I thought Aldous made it. But why were you cooking and hiding?
Pegler asked, flustered. I asked Speak to do it, I told Pegler.
Aldous, what have you done? Did Mom know about Speak?
Roughton nodded solemnly, her face pale. I asked Mrs. Roughton. I told her to keep it a secret from Pegler as a surprise. Roughton knew Pegler adored Speak, so when I suggested having Speak cooking as a surprise for Pegler, she was happy to help. I was looking forward to seeing Pegler's surprised face. I felt bad deceiving Roughton, who was excited. Roughton thought Pegler and I were getting along well, so she was even more shaken by what was happening. I explained to a bewildered Roughton. Unfortunately, Pegler and I are not getting along at all. He just comes home to sleep, and he's been unfaithful.
What?
Roughton's face turned ashen.
Hey, don't make stuff up.
Pegler yelled at me. I have proof, though, I said, handing him an envelope.
What's this?
He began to read the documents. His face grew increasingly pale, so I said firmly, It seems you didn't notice. Recently, there's been a strong scent of women's perfume, so I hired a detective, and the evidence was overwhelming. It was shocking. I had thought Pegler's late returns from work were due to his job, but the detective's findings showed it was because of his affairs. Pegler had been involved with women from work and other girls for a long time. Even the calls during our dates were from women. I said calmly, It's amazing, isn't it? While I balanced work, housework, and childcare, Pegler was out having fun with other women. Pegler looked frustrated and fell silent. Ignoring his silence, I continued. But lately, you can't have an affair without gifting brand bags, right? You can't get attention without spending money. Pathetic. Is that why you've been holding back on household expenses recently? Pegler had been reluctant to contribute to household expenses lately.
Since Speak has already moved out, we don't need that much for household expenses, right?
Pegler argued. Even when I objected, Pegler wouldn't provide for household expenses, so I had to manage with my own income. It turned out he was doing this to fund his affairs. The relatives who had gathered at the entrance were all taken aback. Pegler having an affair despite having such a good wife? That's despicable as a man, they said, looking disgusted. I firmly declared to Pegler, I'm divorcing you, Pegler. Maybe you should remarry one of your mistresses. Of course, I'll make sure to get proper compensation in the divorce settlement. Pegler was visibly shaken by the mention of divorce.
Don't divorce me. I've spent most of my savings on my mistresses, so I hardly have any left. That's why I can't afford a divorce.
I was astounded by Pegler's selfish reasoning. The detective's report showed Pegler had been taking his mistresses to fancy restaurants and buying them brand-name bags. Even with a job at a major company, one would naturally run out of savings with such expenses. Wow, that's just low, the relatives murmured, looking at Pegler with cold eyes. Speak, too, was silently glaring at him. Pegler, finally noticing the atmosphere, looked uncomfortable. I began speaking to Pegler in a calm tone. Do you really think such a selfish excuse will work? And now it seems you're relying on my income? You always look down on my remote work, calling it mere side work, haven't you?
Work you can do at home is just side work, right? My job at a major company is obviously more prestigious.
Pegler boasted. Clearly, he had no remorse for his past actions, and still looked down on my job. It was time to crush Pegler's pride. I dropped a bombshell. I'm a freelance engineer. My income fluctuates, but it should be comparable to yours, Pegler, in annual terms.
What? What do you mean?
Pegler was visibly shaken. After graduating from an online university, I joined a major telecommunications company. Then I went independent and now work remotely. Thanks to my career, I could consistently secure contracts. With the level of income I have, I wouldn't be able to maintain our lifestyle, especially since I haven't received any household money from you recently. Hearing this, Pegler slumped down.
Aldous earns as much as me?
The fact that my income was higher than he expected was a shock to him. He was deeply shaken. If it were just up to me, I would have divorced earlier, but there's Speak, and I didn't want to make her a child of divorced parents. I continued. Speak was still single. Being from a broken home might affect her chances of marriage, so I hesitated to divorce. Suddenly, Pegler, who had been downcast, looked up at Speak and pleaded.
You wouldn't want Mom and me to divorce, right? Speak, please, say something to your mother.
Pegler was desperately scrambling for words, but Speak just looked at him coldly.
Speak.
Pegler was clearly confused. Speak sighed heavily and then said to Pegler, Because of this incident, I've lost respect for you. I want Mom to divorce and find happiness. It's okay if I marry someone who doesn't mind having a single parent. I don't care about you anymore, Dad, Speak said, looking away from Pegler. When I had told Speak about everything up till now, I don't need a dad who's always cheating and doesn't even provide for the family. She was furious. That's why you should go all out, Mom. I'll support you, she had said, leading to this plan. Pegler always complained about everything I did, so I expected him to make some nasty comment when I served dinner. Indeed, Pegler's actions were more extreme than I expected, probably accelerating Speak's detachment from him.
Please, don't abandon your father.
Pegler started crying, devastated by Speak's rejection. Pitiful man, I muttered. Roughton and the relatives kept their distance from Pegler. No one was there to comfort him. Given Pegler's past behavior, it was only natural. After a while, Pegler just sat there, weeping. Eventually, my divorce from Pegler was finalized, but it was tough. Pegler fiercely opposed the divorce. In the lawyer's office,
I will never agree to a divorce,
he kept insisting. Apparently, he really didn't want a divorce because he was out of money. But there was plenty of evidence of Pegler's infidelity, so I finally told him, if you don't agree to the divorce, I'll increase the compensation amount in court. Pegler went pale at that, and sweating, said,
I'm sorry, I'll agree to the divorce.
Afterward, Pegler was dumped by his mistress, as expected. Now with no money left after paying the divorce settlement, he couldn't provide for his mistress. I also claimed compensation from the mistress in the divorce court. She was only interested in Pegler's money. Now broke, Pegler was of no interest to her. Left alone, Pegler seemed to be living in loneliness. Whenever he tried to contact Speak, I can't think of someone who cheats as my father. Speak would hang up and block his calls. This attitude had spread among Pegler's relatives too. After exposing his affair in front of Roughton and the relatives, they all distanced themselves from him. Pegler even sent tearful apologies through his lawyer.
I'm truly sorry. I'm so lonely now, with no one around. Please, can we start over? Then Speak and Mom would treat me as before, right?
Pegler must be desperate to say such things. Being alone in his 50s must be hard, but it's all the result of Pegler's own actions. I wanted him to sincerely reflect on his past actions. I firmly asked my lawyer to convey to Pegler that I was resolutely refusing any reconciliation. Time passed, and it became the end of the year. I moved out of the house I shared with Pegler and used the divorce settlement as a down payment to buy an apartment. It's a 2LDK, spacious enough for a single person. Today, Speak was also home for the holidays. When I asked, "Aren't you going to visit Dad?" Speak made a face of disgust. I'll never forgive Dad. Besides, spending New Year's with just you, Mom, is fun too, she said with a bright smile. Married life with Pegler was really tough, but having Speak gave me the strength to endure. Speak is my treasure. Thank you, Speak, I said, filled with a heartfelt gratitude. Blushing, Speak replied, I'm really glad you're my mom. Thank you, too. After the divorce, I wondered what would happen, but my job remained stable, and I had Speak with me. I can't think about remarriage yet, but there's time to reconsider it slowly. My second life has just begun. With the dawn of the new year, I vow to myself to keep striving forward.